What happened after midnight that left me staring at the door long after it closed? What did he say that still echoes in my heart? This is a story I never expected to tell, but it's been living in my chest for far too long. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. I'd love to know where this story is being heard. Now here's what happened that night. My name is Olivia. I'm 60 now. Most nights are quiet in our home. My husband, Lucas, usually falls asleep in his recliner with the TV humming low in the background, and I pad around the kitchen or fold laundry in silence, sometimes letting the house wrap around me like a worn but familiar quilt. But that night it was different. It was past midnight when I heard the knock. Not loud, not urgent, just a single measured knock. Soft, like whoever was on the other side didn't want to wake the whole world. I was still awake, nursing a cup of chamomile, curled on the couch under a faded blue throw. Lucas had gone to bed early after complaining of a headache. He hadn't been himself lately. When I opened the door, I didn't expect to see Henry. Henry is Lucas's longtime friend. Tall, well-kept for his age, with kind eyes, and a thoughtful voice that always made him feel more like a quiet presence than a loud guest. He and Lucas had worked together for nearly 2 decades. He had never come by unannounced before, and certainly never at this hour. Henry, I blinked at him in the porch light. "I'm sorry, Olivia," he said, almost in a whisper. "I shouldn't have come so late." He looked tired. Not just physically, but in that deep soulway kind of way that speaks to something pressing on a person from the inside. He shifted on his feet, his hands stuffed into the pockets of his coat like he didn't know what to do with them. "Is Lucas awake?" he asked. "No, he went to bed around 10 o'clock. Migraine, I think you want to come in." He hesitated just for a moment and then nodded. I stepped aside, letting him in. He moved slowly, like each step was heavy. I noticed then that his eyes were red. Not just from fatigue. They'd been crying. He sat on the edge of the couch, careful not to lean back too much, like he didn't want to make himself comfortable. "I didn't know where else to go," he said, voice barely above a breath. I stood in the doorway between the living room and kitchen, unsure of what to say. I'd never seen him like this. Henry was always composed, professional, gentle but guarded. This version of him felt raw, like something had cracked open. "Are you all right?" I asked, stepping closer. "You're scaring me a little." He looked up at me and then down at his hands. "Do you ever feel like you missed your moment, Olivia? Like there was a fork in the road years ago, and you chose the safer path, but your heart stayed standing at the other one?" That caught me off guard. I sat down slowly across from him. "I think everyone feels that way eventually," I said carefully. "Life isn't always kind to dreamers." He smiled a little at that. A broken smile. "I'd lost someone," he said. "Not to death, not exactly, just lost her. She slipped away slowly while I stayed too quiet. I waited. She told me she loved me once a long time ago, before Lucas, before all of this. And I told her it wasn't the right time. I told her I wasn't ready." Something stirred in my chest. A memory I hadn't visited in years. And now I asked, she's with someone else. Married, children. Her life went on as it should have. But I've never been able to unlove her. The silence between us thickened. "I'm sorry, Henry," I said, my voice soft. "I didn't know." He looked at me, then really looked. And for a moment I saw the young man he once was. The one who used to come over for Sunday Barbies, who helped Lucas fix the fence one spring, who sat beside me at the Christmas party 3 years ago and made me laugh harder than I had in months. His eyes held mine. "I came here because I couldn't carry it anymore, and because there's something I need to say." I felt my breath catch. My fingers clutched the edges of the throw wrapped around me. "What is it?" I asked. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes on the floor. "I think I waited too long. But I need you to know I was never just Lucas's friend." The room went still. The hum of the fridge in the kitchen, the wind brushing against the windows, it all faded under the weight of his words. I didn't know what to say. And I think in that moment neither did he. I sat there frozen, unsure if I had even heard him right. Henry didn't move. He kept staring at the floor, his hands clasped between his knees like they were the only thing holding him together. I wanted to speak, to ask what he meant, though deep down I already knew. But the words tangled somewhere between my heart and throat. Finally, I found the strength to whisper, "Henry, what are you saying?" He looked up, his eyes full of something that made my chest ache. I mean, he said slowly, that I didn't just care about you because you were Lucas's wife. I mean that I used to hope foolishly maybe that you'd see me, that you'd look past the roles we were all playing and see me. I felt like the air had been sucked from the room. My pulse beat loudly in my ears. This wasn't a confession from a stranger. It was from someone who had been part of our lives for decades. Someone I trusted, someone Lucas trusted. And yet, I couldn't deny the flicker of recognition inside me. A memory. It had been years ago at a 4th of July picnic. Lucas was busy on the grill laughing with the neighbors. I had forgotten the lemonade in the kitchen, and Henry had followed me inside. We'd bumped into each other in the narrow hallway, and he had caught my arms to steady me. Just a second too long, his hands warm, his eyes searching mine. We both laughed it off. But I remembered how that moment stayed with me long after the party ended. I had buried it, dismissed it. Life is full of moments like that, small almost now that were rising to the surface all at once. Henry, I said, my voice tight. I'm married. You're his best friend. I know, he said quickly. And I'm not asking you for anything. I swear I don't want to ruin anything. He stopped, exhaled hard. I just needed to say it once out loud to someone who mattered. The sincerity in his voice cut through me. He wasn't trying to pull me into anything. There was no seduction in his words, no manipulation, just truth, raw and painful. I stood up slowly, walked over to the kitchen. My hands trembled as I rinsed my mug in the sink. I needed something to do, some way to keep from unraveling. You should have told me years ago, I said without looking at him. I know. Why now? He hesitated. Because lately I've been thinking about what we leave unsaid. About how one day we won't get the chance to speak anymore. And I didn't want this to be one of those things. I turned to face him. You have no idea what this does to me, I said, my voice soft but shaky. You walked in here and said something I'm not sure I can carry. I'm sorry, he said. I'll go. He stood, but I held up a hand. No, just give me a moment. He sat again and I returned to the couch, keeping a measured distance between us. You know, I began. There were times I wondered if I imagined it. The way you looked at me, the way you always asked how I was doing, even when no one else noticed I was tired. Lucas. He's a good man, but he's never been the type to really see past what's in front of him. Henry nodded. You deserve more than being invisible. Those words slipped into a part of me I had kept quiet for years. I had grown used to being the background to Lucas's story. The cook, the cleaner, the polite hostess at dinners. I loved him. I still do. But love doesn't always mean being understood. You're not invisible to me, Henry said softer now. You never were. I closed my eyes, letting the silence stretch between us. I can't undo my life, I said finally. And I wouldn't want to, but I won't pretend your words didn't matter. I can't expect anything more, he said. Truly, I had to give you that truth. It was nearing 1 a.m. The living room light cast a pale glow on the walls. Outside, a light drizzle had started, tapping softly on the windows like a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. Think you should go now? I said quietly. Henry stood. His face looked more peaceful somehow, like speaking had lifted a weight from his chest. He nodded once, then walked slowly to the door. When he opened it, he turned back to me. Thank you for listening, he said. I didn't reply. I just watched him disappear into the dark. And long after the door closed, I stayed there on the couch, staring at the empty space where he'd sat, wondering why the quiet of the house suddenly felt so loud. The next morning arrived wrapped in haze. I barely slept, my thoughts tossed and turned more than my body ever could. The sound of Henry's voice kept replaying in my mind like a soft echo. You're not invisible to me. I didn't know whether to be comforted or shaken by it. Lucas was already in the kitchen when I came down. He had made coffee and was flipping through the paper like he did every morning. He looked up when he heard me, offered a small smile. Sleep okay? He asked. Not really, I said, sliding into the chair across from him. He didn't press. He never really did. That was one of the things I had come to accept over the years. Lucas was kind, dependable, but not curious. He didn't dig, and I had learned to keep parts of myself buried because of that. As I watched him read the sports section, sipping from his favorite mug, I felt this strange pang in my chest. Not guilt exactly, but something adjacent to it. A longing maybe for something I hadn't known I was missing until someone else pointed it out. Henry's visit had opened a door I didn't know existed, and now I couldn't unsee what was on the other side. I moved through the day in a quiet daze. Did laundry, watered the plants, went to the store and back. I must have passed a dozen faces, exchanged pleasantries, smiled when expected. But I wasn't really there. I was replaying every second of the night before, the way he sat forward, how he had spoken with restraint, the sadness behind his eyes. He hadn't come to take anything from me. He had just needed to be seen. And that haunted me more than if he'd asked for something. By the time the sun dipped low and the shadows lengthened in the corners of the house, I found myself standing at the sink again, staring out at the fading light. My reflection in the window glass looked tired, older than yesterday. I don't know what came over me, but I reached for my phone. My hand hovered above Henry's name for a long time. Then I put it down. No, I couldn't do that. It would only complicate things. Stir a pot that had already boiled over in my mind. But life has a way of putting people in your path when you least expect them. 2 days later I ran into him at the grocery store. I was in the produce aisle comparing cucumbers like they held answers, and then I heard his voice behind me. Olivia. I turned and there he was. Same gentle face, same worn eyes. For a second we just stood there saying nothing. The hum of the store around us faded. It was like we had stepped into some quiet space where only the two of us existed. Hi, I finally managed. I wasn't expecting to see you, he said. Neither was I. He glanced at my basket. Still loyal to your gala apples. I see. I smiled despite myself. Some things don't change. His expression softened. Some do. A pause stretched between us. He shifted slightly, the way people do when they want to say more but aren't sure if they should. Do you want to grab a coffee? He asked. Just to talk. Everything in me tightened. I should have said no. Should have walked away. Should have reminded myself that I was a married woman. But instead I heard myself say, there's a place down the street. The cafe was small and quiet, tucked between a florist and an old tour shop. We sat by the window. I kept my hands wrapped tightly around my cup like it could anchor me. I shouldn't have come by that night, he said after a long sip. You didn't do anything wrong, I replied. You were honest. That's rare these days. He nodded slowly. I've been carrying those words for years. It just got too heavy. I didn't expect to feel the way I did after you left, I said barely above a whisper, like something in me had cracked open. He looked up sharply, eyes searching mine. I never meant to hurt you. You didn't, I said quickly. You just reminded me I still have a heart, that it still wants to feel seen. We sat in silence again, the kind that doesn't beg to be filled. Outside people walked past carrying bags, talking into phones, laughing. And here we were, two people in their 60s, sitting in the middle of a life that had taken turns neither of us had planned. I'm not trying to change your life, Olivia, Henry said gently. I just wanted to be honest before I got too old to say the things that mattered. I looked down at my coffee, then back at him. I appreciate that more than you know, I said, but I don't know what to do with it. You don't have to do anything, he said. You already gave me more than I expected. And he meant it that much, I could see. As we stood to leave, he touched my arm lightly like a goodbye. And for the second time that week, I watched him walk away. But this time something inside me followed, not in the literal sense, but a piece of me, quiet and curious, had started moving in his direction, and I didn't know if it would ever fully come back. That night, the house felt quieter than usual, like it was holding its breath. Lucas was watching TV again, the glow of the screen flickering across his face while he sat reclined, remote resting on his stomach. He didn't look up when I walked in, just asked if I'd remembered to pick up milk. I said yes and went to put away the groceries, but my hands moved slower than they should have. Everything did. I stood in the kitchen with the fridge door open longer than necessary, staring at a shelf full of neatly organized containers. My life looked like that, too, compartmentalized, categorized, contained. But suddenly nothing about it felt simple. After I closed the door, I leaned against the counter and just stood there thinking, feeling. Henry's voice was still with me. The way he'd spoken in the cafe, calm, not asking anything, just offering a piece of himself like it didn't matter what I did with it, only that I'd received it. I found myself whispering aloud. What am I supposed to do now? There was no answer, Just the faint sound of the TV and the slow creak of the old house settling. The next morning I woke before Lucas and sat in the backyard with my coffee. The garden was just beginning to bloom again, late spring flowers pushing through the soil like they had no fear of the past. I watched the wind move through the leaves, and in that silence I started to see things more clearly. This wasn't about Henry, not entirely. It was about me. For years I had quieted parts of myself. I had settled into the rhythm of marriage, of routine, of being a wife, a host, a good neighbor, a pleasant presence. I had become background music in my own life, soft and steady, never demanding attention. But Henry had struck a chord I hadn't heard in years, not because he declared love or longing, but because he saw something in me I had nearly forgotten was there. And once seen, it couldn't be unseen. Later that week, I found an old box tucked away in the back of the closet. Letters, journals, photographs, pieces of a younger version of myself that felt like someone else entirely. I sat on the floor for hours flipping through them, holding each memory like it was fragile. I remembered the girl I used to be. The one who wrote poetry in the margins of cookbooks, who danced in the living room barefoot, who dreamed of writing stories that made people feel something. Somewhere along the line I had stopped checking in with her. That night after dinner I sat across from Lucas. We hadn't talked much that day, and I realized how often that happened. Our silence had become a comfort and a crutch. "I saw Henry last week," I said. Lucas looked up confused at the store. "No, he came by late. Said he needed someone to talk to." Lucas nodded slowly, brows furrowed. "He okay, I think he just needed to be honest about something." There was a long pause. Lucas set down his fork. "Did he say something about us?" "No, not really," I said, and that was the truth in its own way. But it made me think about us. About me. Lucas looked at me, then really looked. It had been a while since he had done that. "What do you mean?" I searched for the right words, not to accuse or blame but to be truthful. "I think I've been disappearing, Lucas. Little by little, and I don't think either of us noticed." You looked away, then back again. "I guess I always figured if you weren't saying anything you were fine." "I know," I said. "And that's part of the problem." He swallowed hard, nodded once. "I don't know what to say. Maybe we just start by talking more, not about groceries or bills. About us, about what we're still holding on to and what we're not." Lucas didn't argue. He didn't shut down. He just nodded again, slower this time. "All right." And that was the first time in a long time that I felt like something was shifting. Like maybe there was space in our lives for something more than just routines. A week later I saw Henry again. It was at the park by accident. He was sitting on a bench feeding crumbs to the birds. He stood when he saw me, offered a soft smile. Hey. We didn't talk much. Just walked a bit side by side. No expectations. No wait. As we parted he said, "Are you okay?" I took a moment, then nodded. "I think I'm starting to be." And that was enough. That night I sat in bed with the window open. The breeze was cool. The stars were out, and I felt something stir in me, a quiet knowing. Not everything needs to become something. Some moments are meant to wake us up, to remind us that we're still alive, still worthy of being seen, still capable of growing even now. Henry's words may always echo in my ears, but it's what I discovered about myself in their aftermath that changed.